started where you're currently at, and yeah, brief overview of your career path leading to your current role. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. So, again, my name is Eigil Samset, and I lead the cardiology care area globally for
Mm,
GE Healthcare. But
yep.
obviously, I didn't start my career path there. Oh, wait, I just had something here on my phone that created trouble. Okay. Obviously, I
Yep.
didn't start my career path here. I actually started in Medtech over 25 years ago. After studying engineering in Norway, where I'm from, I decided to take some time to get some international experience. I went to Stanford at the advice of my professor in Norway. He actually knew the inventors of intravascular ultrasound that are at Standford Medical University. So I spent
Mm,
about a year there, really becoming that my first, let's say, introduction to the cardiology area, working on the very early versions of intravascular ultrasound, which was
mm,
in many ways for me, super exciting, both getting to be in a clinical environment with cardiologists, but also working in a very sort of cross-disciplinary international environment with researchers from the US, from Japan, from Europe, working together on very exciting developments in order to do things like tissue characterization on IVUS. So
mm,
after that, returning back to Norway, I got to work in a very exciting, again, cross-disciplinary research department in Norway at the National Hospital in Norway, or the Riks Hospital in Norway, where we were really working together, cardiologists, radiologists, surgeons, and engineers, to sort of move the forefront of image-guided therapy. So using things like MR to guide therapies, fluoro, ultrasound, robotics. So I was fortunate to work in a very exciting, innovative environment for more than 10 years,
mm,
leading the technology development there in a sort of academic role. Also doing my PhD within that group, working on MR-guided therapies, which was at the time, brand new and super exciting. Uh, so I started really my path as in the academic space, but later decided that as an engineer, I felt like the impact that I could have on healthcare globally would probably be bigger in the industry space because we could publish
mm,
papers that could be, read by, maybe a few dozen readers. But
yes.
if in contributing to products, I thought that, the impact could be much, much greater. So I switched over to the industry side, initially working a little bit in the Norwegian oil and gas business, looking at
Mm,
visualizing of subsea reservoirs. But really, my passion and my background has always been in medical imaging. So I got
yep.
an opportunity to work in GE Healthcare and really be able to be, let's say, a bridge between research happening in the industry, in the academic space, and then taking those research results and bringing those into products for GE Healthcare. So I was in our cardiovascular ultrasound business for 9 years, doing a lot of that type of innovation and research work, working with technical researchers and clinical researchers, and then bringing that into products for GE Healthcare. But the
Mm,
last 4.5 years, I have been leading what we call our cardiology care area, which takes a broader view, not just looking at cardiovascular ultrasound, but really looking at all of the products that GE Healthcare has that
yep.
helps the cardiology patient. So from early detection with ECG, handheld ultrasound, we can talk about that maybe a little bit more later, but then also
Mm,
using ultrasound imaging or cath labs, everything that has to do with cardiology is currently my scope. So it's been an interesting journey, and also still have the opportunity actually to work with the academia because I have a faculty position as professor in University of Oslo. So I started that already at the age of 32, and has been
mm,
supervising PhD students alongside with my industrial role with GE Healthcare. Really, finding a good balance between academic research and sort of commercial industrialization of those research.
yes, amazing. It seems like you're wearing a lot of different hats, but still it still falls within the healthcare industry. So based on your career path, what or who has been the most significant source of inspiration in your journey within the healthcare industry? Because I'm very curious, was there any specific mentor, events, or breakthrough moment that profoundly influenced your passion for healthcare innovation or guided you throughout your career direction?
Well, I think that's actually an excellent question. I think in many ways, my main inspiration in principle as a sort of passion or purpose, if you will, has been always to bring better healthcare, in particular in the domain of cardiology. And, I've
Yeah.
had the privilege to work with so many great cardiologists and physicians over the years. At Stanford, as I mentioned, I worked with the inventors of cardiovascular ultrasound, with Peter Fitzgerald and Paul Yack. Working with a cardiothoracic surgeon in many years in Oslo called Eric Fosse, who is
Mm.
really an innovator and has that ability to look outside of the box. And also my experience working in the U.S. later. So I also spent a couple of years at Harvard Medical School, Brigham and Women's Hospital, working with a radiologist called Ferenc Jolish, who was a great inspiration to me, and also a lot of other physicians. So I think that's sort of been a very important source of inspiration. But I think also within the fantastic organization I'm with right now, with GE Healthcare, we have
Yeah.
such a great focus on creating better outcomes for patients. So I've been fortunate to work with a lot of fantastic leaders across GE Healthcare that has helped me to sort of really understand product management and how to create uh, physician, patient, and customer value through the different products that we're developing.
Mm. Wow, amazing. So yeah, I'd love to understand more about your work at GE Healthcare. So yeah, people always talk about AI and the application of AI across different industry. So particularly in your field, in the future of cardiology care, how do you envision AI shaping the future of healthcare? So can you please highlight a specific innovation or advancement at GE Healthcare that you believe are making the most impact or on the patient's outcomes?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think the way I'm thinking about it, although I'm a true believer in AI and the fantastic impact it will bring. I do think about it as a tool, though, that in the
Mm.
end, what we're trying to create is not just AI, but we're trying to create better outcomes for patients, and the way that we have done that in G Healthcare is kind of starting at what we could call the fundamental level of AI development. So we have developed a lot of AI algorithms that are already commercial in our products that do things such as automating measurements, being able to understand things like views in an ultrasound image, improve the image reconstruction of CT and MR images so that they can be done faster. So those type of things, we've done a lot of those, and I think it's very important as a foundational level. But what I'm looking at in my group, which is really looking across the pathways to look at how can we add clinical value by build on all those, let's say, foundational elements of AI, but that
Mm.
also then add things that can automate workflows, things that can help optimize care pathways, and maybe ultimately in the
Yeah.
future we can also create tools that can really help physicians to navigate some of the more complex problems related to episodes of care. I mean, think about the patient that is just fatigued or have shortness of breath, and there may not be a clear understanding about the pathway, for example. But if you ask about examples, I think GE Healthcare has been really one of the leaders in introducing AI in cardiology products. We have, for example, in MR imaging, we have developed something we call Sonic DL, which is
Mm.
maybe characterized by the ability to not just scan faster with MR, because that's important since there's a little backlog on patients that needs MR scans. If you can do more patients every day, that's fantastic, but also allow us to scan patients that may not be able to hold their breath, for example, the patients that may not have a steady heart rhythm, and
Mm.
doing very high quality cardiac imaging in just a single beat. I think that's kind of an amazing breakthrough in many ways that has been enabled by AI.
Yeah.
Another very different example could be what we have done with Caption AI, where we have basically put AI guidance on our handheld ultrasound. So this really enables clinicians who are not trained as sonographers or echocardiographers to do great ultrasound exams of the heart, but actually allow this type of AI to guide in real time how an echo image is being acquired from a patient. And I think this is just a way to really democratize ultrasound, meaning that it's no longer just for the experts, but some of the basic diagnostics with ultrasound that can typically be done in the community or in the physician office is now enabled by this handheld AI-enabled little ultrasound device that we call Vscan Air SL.
Yes, definitely. So from your examples, I can understand that the application of AI has allowed GE Healthcare to enhance patient care, streamline operations, and improve the patient outcomes. But but every coin has two sides, right? And I imagine AI also as well. So what are the most significant challenges or be it technical, operational, or cultural challenges that you encounter when integrating AI into healthcare solutions?
I think that, I mean, there are a number of challenges, but I will say just to start with that, I think there's we're seeing a lot of change these days because I think everybody, as consumers and physicians, clinicians, they are seeing the tremendous speed in which AI is being developed over the past 2 years. So I think in many ways there's a very positive momentum in terms of culture and positive attitude towards AI. I think as product developers that are trying to make an impact, I think for a company like GE Healthcare and everybody really in the space, I think it's very important to find, let's say, the right problems to solve. Because if you think about AI as a tool, you can easily think, everything looks like a nail if you sort of have a hammer as a tool in a way. So I think the idea is that we really need to find the truly impactful problems that can actually make a big change for, as you said, clinical efficiencies or clinical outcomes, financial operational efficiencies. So to find those very strong value propositions and also make them very credible. I think that can only be done by collecting strong clinical data. And I think that's going to be more and more important, especially as we, let's say, move up the value chain. As I mentioned, we today have things that can do things faster and better. In the future, I think we can also predict, let's say, future disease progression, for example. And as you're becoming more clinical in your approach, also clinical data has been very important. And to do that, I think one of the challenges we're seeing today is the ability for product developers, for industry to get access to what I would call multimodal data. We have a lot of data from single modalities, like from MR, from ultrasound, from CT, from ECG, and so on. But when we talk about multimodal AI, we really talk about AI that can leverage language like clinical information together with image data, together with waveforms. And oftentimes, we get these pieces of data disconnected, and it's challenging to get everything sort of together, and we can train maybe foundational models on multimodal data. So I would say that's kind of a challenge. And then I think the other challenge, which is basically up to us to solve, is how to integrate AI into the workflow in a very strong and supportive way. Because if you try to totally disrupt the workflow, introduce a very new tool or change everything, it's not going to be so easy. So I think that truly understanding the user, the jobs to be done, the workflow that they're working within, their constraints, and adapting to that, not saying that we can never make a disruptive workflow, but of course, if you want to disrupt something, the burden of evidence, you really need to show tremendous value there. So it depends a little bit on the actual problem to solve. But I think those are maybe what I would consider the biggest sort of challenges, find the most impactful problems, get access to the right data to solve those problems, and then solve it in a way that, can really empower users in a great way and supports their workflow.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's very eye-opening to listen to different innovations that you and the company has been incorporating into your system to deliver more patient-centric outcomes. So in terms of innovations, I'd love to understand more about the methods that GE Healthcare can ensure that its innovation prioritizes patient needs and deliver measurable outcomes to both patients and healthcare providers. Because we all know that in this healthcare industry, aligning the benefits between the patients and the providers are always the key. So curious to learn more about GE Healthcare approach.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, really the reason why we some 4 years ago created what we call the care pathway of the care area that I'm leading for cardiology care area is that we saw that with our, let's say, previous approach, looking at, products individually, looking at ultrasound, CT and MR and things like that individually, we were not necessarily able to optimize for the bigger problems, for things that can truly impact patient outcome. So what we like to do is to really start with the outcome first. Like, what are we aiming at? What is the end game that we think we can impact in terms of creating better operational efficiency or better clinical outcomes? And I think our approach to doing that is just to be extremely close to the customer, to truly understand what problems are they facing every day, what problems are they facing with patients, and having that very customer-centric approach, I think is critical, but also that our own team, like people like myself or our engineers, we really get out there, that we spend time in the cath lab when we talk about interventional cardiology, for example, or in the echo lab or the imaging department, that we have people within GE Healthcare who are out with customers who feel the pain that they're feeling every day, so that it's not becoming like a theoretical exercise, but it's becoming something that you can feel yourself. And then I think in this space, it's just so important to be, look at what I would call continuous or iterative innovation, meaning that you don't just develop a product in the lab and you put it out there in the world and hope that people will like it, but that you really keep a very close loop, working super close with the people that use your technology, take their feedback, make adjustments, introduce new innovations, do it quite frequently and fast, so that any real world learnings can be fed back into that product and make it so much better. So I think that in essence, to be patient-centered truly means literally to be patient-centric, in the sense that being out there and look at how technology is being used with the patient, and then do that in a very deliberate way.
Right. Yeah. Very, very interesting. But besides the customer, the patients themselves, I guess GE Healthcare also aims to foster collaboration and partnerships with other key stakeholders like technology companies, research institutions, and healthcare providers to drive innovation, right? So can you please share an example of successful collaborations and their outcomes?
Yeah, no, I think that's just so true. And we work along multiple dimensions when we talk about this. So I mentioned our work with clinicians and customers. So that's kind of, I think, first for any company developing product. But I think also in our case, it's very important to be close to those that are developing technology also outside our own organization. I mentioned, like, in my previous role, I worked with technical innovators and academics that develop technology, either it's in the AI and machine learning space, could also be in, let's say, multi-physics, mathematical modeling in the body, for example. I mean, a lot of that technology research, I think, is very important to be close to that. And, they come up with some fantastic ideas that we can help put into product. But also companies, GE Healthcare is a big company, and we think that we can both learn from startups, but also to leverage the results of startups. So we have a very, what I would call an open architecture, or an open ecosystem is maybe a better word. Working closely with other companies to look at how we can make complementary technologies that are being developed by startup others to be integrated with our technology, so we can actually offer a very seamless and good solution for customers. But I will also add that we spend a lot of time working with this professional societies. So, for example, in cardiology, we have the American College of Cardiology in the US, we have the European Society of Cardiology in Europe. And personally, I've worked very closely with both of those societies, because they are there having a role beyond, just being a support for the professionals, but also helping advocacy, for example, to be able to train, educate physicians on AI, to maybe impact the way that things are being reimbursed, to work with hospital systems to help them better implement AI and improved cardiology care pathways. So again, there's a whole network of players here, and we really try to be somebody that can be a partner for all those, be it universities, startups, but also professional societies in our space.
Yes. So I love to understand more about how do regulatory frameworks and compliance requirements influence the development and deployment of healthcare technologies at GE Healthcare. I know this can be a very broad question, but I love to understand more from your perspective. Yeah.
No, it's a broad question, and many people I think about when you mention regulatory, think about that as a constraint or a
Yes.
problem. But I mean, I actually choose to take the perspective that regulatory requirements are here to, number one, keep the patients safe, and also to some degree can help actually innovation, because sometimes actually what we could think about as constrictions can actually bring about new ideas and new innovations. So I would say the regulatory space is now in many ways evolving because the speed of innovation in AI is moving so fast. It's difficult in many ways for AI regulators to catch up. And in some markets, you could say that maybe they're a little bit behind, and other markets are trying to anticipate the future. GE Healthcare, as you know, is a global company, so we really need to take into account the regulatory environment in all of those places. But I think the regulatory frameworks that are being developed across the world is important because it's helping us to make sure that, number one, AI is unbiased, because sometimes we see that AI developed at maybe a single institution might be biased towards a certain subpopulation, being from ethnicity or specific conditions and so on. So I think important to help AI be unbiased. I think it's important to take care of patients' privacy, that regulations related to privacy and security, making sure that no private data is not getting, let's say, astray. And I think it's important just for the overall quality and having a high bar on the, let's say, robustness and quality of products that are being developed using AI. So in that sense, I think in many ways it's helping us to provide better patient care. But of course, in some areas, you could say that it's also restrictive because especially maybe privacy concerns, I mentioned like access to multimodal data earlier. Some of this will actually, in our efforts to protect individual privacy, we might actually, limit the innovation speed that could actually benefit patients in a very positive way from a perspective of, what type of outcomes we could bring. So I would not say that we want to lower the bar for privacy, but I do think that we just need to balance things in a way so that we can not being over restrictive, but really take care of patients' privacy, but at the same time see if we can find a way to balance that so we can take care of innovation speed and develop these models that can only be developed if we have data across different modalities and across different sort of formats or systems. So that foundational models, for example, can learn from it.
Yes, wonderful. It's very great to listen to your sharing on how GE Healthcare is adapting to the local nuances in terms of the regulatory differences. So I want to change the gears a bit and understand more about your leadership styles. So looking back on your career, what has been the most important or significant learning experience or turning point, and how has it shaped your leadership style or decision-making approach?
That's a very good question. In many ways, I'm a very sort of ambitious and driven person that really likes things to move fast and be able to make progress. But I think one of the things that I've learned along the way, both through my own experience, but also through several of my mentors, is to think carefully about which decisions that are good to make fast, because we want to maintain speed and momentum, right? And when it's time to sort of take time out and think carefully about the direction that we're going. And I mean, I see that you have actually on your bookshelf behind you there, Eric Ries's Lean Startup, and that's really one of the books that have in many ways inspired me to, looking at iterative innovation, but also looking at opportunities to pivot and when to sort of take a stop and saying, let's consider our options here. So I think that's really important for me. Think about what is a two-way decision that you can make quickly and maybe revert back if you need to pivot. And what is like a one-door decision where it might be good to actually collect the data and make sure you put your sort of intuition, let's say, on pause for a second in order to sort of collect all the data you need, and then making that decision, for example. And I think another sort of leadership perspective that is very important for me is, as a leader, you're not necessarily the boss, the decision maker that just points the direction for everybody, but you're actually there to serve your people. That in GE Healthcare, we hold servant leadership as one of the most important leadership values. And it's very, for me, that's also actually very, very personal in many ways, that I want to be a leader that is also a servant for everybody that I'm set to lead, that I'm there to help remove impediments, to help develop my team, that I'm somebody that is not just sort of looking for my own career path, but is actually looking for the development of those I'm set to lead, and looking to help everybody in terms of creating value for our customers. So I think those are maybe the important things for me, like, the right time to make the right decision, and sort of fast or slow depending on what we're looking at, and then servant leadership.
Yes, amazing. Learn fast and then fail fast, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
right. So I'd love to end the interview today with a very broad question and future-looking one as well. So looking ahead, what emerging trends or technologies do you anticipate will have the greatest influence on cardiology and healthcare over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's actually an amazing question. I think that what we're already seeing, and I think this will just continue, is that we're seeing that different ways that imaging is becoming more and more important in cardiology. We sort of thought about that as a radiology discipline. Now we're seeing both CT and MR playing a much bigger role in cardiology. We're seeing intravascular and intracardiac imaging being applied. So I think that we're going to see more and more, minimal invasive or even non-invasive techniques guided by imaging. So I think that's going to be like a key trend that will continue to develop. And then if you couple that with the very hot topic that we already talked about with AI. AI can be fantastic at understanding imaging, but it can also be fantastic at understanding the clinical context around the patient. So that's why I think that multimodal AI combining, let's say, clinical context with imaging, leveraging foundational models, large language models, I think is going to be just amazing to see how that can be, an assistant, an accelerator, an engine for growth in the cardiology space, because we have so much more work to do for patients that are currently not being treated, for patients that are maybe not treated as quickly as they could be. And the impact and the outcome we can bring about is going to be amazing. So I think by utilizing imaging, AI, and foundational models in cardiology is going to be amazing as we will look at the next few years here.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us. It's very clear that your work and vision at GE Healthcare are driving impactful changes in the healthcare industry. Yeah, so I think that already wraps up the interview today. Thank you again for taking the time to sit with me. I learned a lot personally from you today, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Likewise. All right. Thank you so much. Take care
Yeah,
now.
have a great
All
day.
right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.